The two largest superpowers in the world just quietly made Bitcoin plays in the last week. We've got a publicly traded company in China raising over $500 million to buy Bitcoin, and the first mainland Chinese broker got approved to launch Bitcoin trading. And then we got even more interesting developments coming out of Russia. But before we get to all that, we need to discuss what Donald Trump just said about Bitcoin and the US dollar. Let's watch the clip.
Bills pass in the next few months?
Well, it's a very funny thing, crypto. So I became a fan of crypto, and to me, it's an industry. I view it as an industry, and I'm president. And if we didn't have it, China would, or somebody else would, but most likely China. China would love to. And we've dominated that industry. It's a big industry, by the way. In fact, when the stock market went down recently, crypto and Bitcoin and all of that went down much less than anybody else as a group. And we've created a very powerful industry, and that's much more important than anything that we invest in. We invest in it, but really that was an industry that wasn't doing particularly well. I got involved with it a couple of years ago, and before the second term. I got involved before I decided to run. I only decided to run because I saw what was happening, and Biden was incompetent, and the administration was crooked and incompetent. And I was in Bitcoin then, not knowing if I was going to do it a third time. So it's become amazing. I mean, it's the jobs that it produces. And I notice more and more you pay in Bitcoin. I mean, people are saying it takes a lot of pressure off the dollar. And it's a great thing for our country. So I don't care about investing. You know, I have kids, and they invest in different things. They do believe in it. But I'm president, and what I did do there is build an industry that's very important. And, you know, if we didn't have it, China would. Okay.
Sir, Mr. President.
All right, interesting stuff there. First of all, obviously, the first thing he said is if the U.S. doesn't do it, China's going to do it. And we have some news to cover that. But I do want to touch on one thing he did said in there, Luke, that I found very interesting. What did Trump mean when he said, hey, if you use Bitcoin, it takes pressure off the dollar? Obviously, it sounds like a good thing from his perspective. This is him essentially saying, you know, hey, use Bitcoin, you know, less pressure on the dollar. But I don't know if he's saying exactly what he thinks he's saying. It's probably not a good thing as he was stating that. So I don't know, Luke, your thoughts on this first, and then I do have some tweets on just that point itself, but I want to get your thoughts before we move on, and then I'm going to cover the China and Russia news.
Yeah, I'm excited to get to the China and the Russia news because that is very, very interesting. But I think maybe what Donald Trump is saying when he's referring to Bitcoin taking pressure off the dollar is maybe because the US dollar and US treasuries have been the world's savings vehicle for the past 50 years. Since we entered this petrodollar agreement in 1973-ish, global governments largely accumulated US treasuries and put them in their reserves between 1973 and 2008. And obviously the 2008 GFC kind of changed that, and central banks all of a sudden began accumulating gold. So I don't know if I'm kind of reading between the lines here. I'm probably guessing and speculating that Trump is referring to US dollars and US treasuries being the savings vehicle of the world. Maybe Trump's saying, look, Bitcoin can be the new savings vehicle and the US dollar can remain being the medium of exchange and the unit of account. Well, what do you think, Opti? Is that a bit far-fetched or?
Yeah, I think that's the Bitcoin take. Obviously, I think you hit the nail on the head in that first part about treasuries, especially when you consider all the stablecoin regulations that's seemingly going to get pushed through. We all know stablecoins are the biggest backers of treasury, or rather, sorry, the biggest buyers of treasury right now. And so part of that, I think, is the idea that you said of store value, you know, of using Bitcoin as an alternative means to store your value instead of course, you know, treasuries. But that's not necessarily what they are publicly stating. But as we've kind of been looking through the tea leaves and trying to read the writing on the wall here, it does look like Trump says one thing and then he really means another thing. One of the things the public administration has been saying for a long time is that they want a really strong dollar. But if you kind of read into that prediction, or rather that saying a little bit, it's starting to sound like he is projecting that he wants a weaker dollar, which is, of course, what he's been doing, or what he's been known to do in the past. Obviously, he's been putting a lot of pressure on Jerome Powell of cutting interest rates. If they can weaken the dollar and purchasing power against other currencies, get lower interest rate, then, you know, Trump's favorite thing to do, which is free money, get investment driving again. Maybe that's kind of what he's talking about. But from a Bitcoiner's perspective, it sounds like it's like one of those things, like you're saying it, I don't know if you know what you're saying, and it's probably not what you wish it to be kind of things in those scenarios. So that's kind of my takeaway. And a lot of Bitcoiners were talking about this idea of like, yeah, maybe Trump, this is not taking pressure off the dollar in the way that you think it is. It's probably not a good thing, as we all talk about here as Bitcoiners. Like, Bitcoin's going to eat up all of the world's wealth. The final boss is obviously the dollar itself, the US dollar, of course. And maybe these are projections, and it really kind of makes me think of our boy Mark Goodwin's Bitcoin dollar thesis. It does seem to be playing out in real time. Anyways, let's get into the China news, because that's why you're here. This is the big news here. But I did find it very interesting that the very same week Trump is talking about China, if we don't do it, China's going to do it. We have some big news coming out of the two, rival superpowers here. Now, this first headline, you might be like, all right, guys, you're fake newsing me again, you're clickbaiting me again, but no, this is actually a huge news story. Of course, historically, China's been infamous for banning Bitcoin. They banned it, I don't even know how many times at this point. They were basically the cause of the last bull run to end in 2021, and now we've slowly been seeing them move, using Hong Kong as a proxy, moving towards and back into Bitcoin, especially ever since Trump came out and became pro-Bitcoin, or the first Bitcoin president of the United States. So let's get this article headline, and then we have a bunch of other stuff to talk about. This one's going to be jam-packed for you guys. So I'm over here on the block, and it goes, Chinese brokerage, and forgive me, I think it's Guotai Junan. Forgive me. Guotai Junan stock surges nearly 200% after Hong Kong crypto trading license approval. And this dropped on Friday, but we're getting to it now because we have a lot of receipts here, just kind of showing you the nation state FOMO going on right now. So Guotai Junan International, a Hong Kong listed Chinese brokerage firm, has seen its shares surge nearly 200% in the past 2 days after the company obtained the regulatory approval to offer cryptocurrency trading services in Hong Kong. And I'm sure you're asking yourself, like, okay, Opti, they're Hong Kong listed Chinese brokerage. Like, I thought we're talking about mainland China. Just hold on. The securities firm announced on Wednesday that the Securities and Futures Commission has upgraded its existing Type 1 license intended for securities dealings to enable its clients to trade cryptocurrency on its platform, supported by an SFC licensed crypto platform. And then here's where it gets interesting. Guotai Junan is a major brokerage that became the first Chinese securities firm to be listed in Hong Kong through an IPO in 2010. And the company is known for its Chinese state backing, with Shanghai's state-owned enterprise vehicle acting as the controlling shareholder of its parent company, Guotai Haitong Group, according to data from enterprise portal Quichacha. Forgive me. So, again, as we've kind of been talking about, we've been kind of going down this rabbit hole throughout the time here on the show. That is China using Hong Kong as a proxy to kind of dip their toes in Bitcoin, maybe use them as an experiment. Now it's coming out that mainland China is actually trying to list some Bitcoin trading in Hong Kong. And of course, this is more of a rumor, but this is kind of the unofficial policy. Anything that happens out of China is obviously being backed by the government, by Xi Jinping himself. And as you can see in this writing, in this article itself, it clearly states the company is known for its Chinese state backing, with Shanghai's state-owned enterprise vehicle acting as the controlling shareholder. For those that aren't, too financially savvy, as a controlling shareholder, usually you need your approval to get this stuff going through. So that's the first bit. But Luke, let's chat about this. I know you talked about this over the weekend. Huge story. And of course, more credence to the idea that ever since Trump came out, has been pressuring China, saying we're going to go full Bitcoin. You're starting to see the nation state ripples. Everyone is starting to take Bitcoin very seriously. And now we have some concrete evidence that China, the state itself, is looking at Bitcoin exposure, obviously using Hong Kong as a proxy. So We covered this a while ago, and it seems like we were right about it. As much as you guys say we speculate on the show all the time, once you got some good first principles, things become a lot clearer. So, Luke, let's chat on this real quick, and then I'll rip through the other news stories, because I think this might be the biggest news story here. But we have some more evidence that it's not just one bank. This is not just one domino falling. It's a lot of dominoes falling.
Yeah, I'll try not to ruin the Christmas present, so to say, and give away too much of what we're about to talk about. But again, this is huge. Hong Kong launched Bitcoin spot ETFs in early 2024. Again, in 2023 and 2024, we saw some strange signals showing that maybe China was quietly backflipping on Bitcoin behind closed doors. Again, Hong Kong came out and they said, hey, we want to be the global hub for crypto. Again, they did use that dirty word crypto, but that's what they said in late 2023. And then there were reports showing that Beijing insiders were at a lot of these high-level Bitcoin meetups in Hong Kong, and they were supposedly giving Hong Kong their blessing. There was a famous article on the Wall Street Journal, I believe, that read something along the lines of Beijing gives Hong Kong its blessing to become the global crypto hub. So that was kind of a big signpost suggesting that China was shifting, okay? And then we saw Chinese courts in 2023 and 2024 come out and say, yeah, you know what? Bitcoin, despite it being banned, it's actually property in China. So they started regarding Bitcoin as property. We saw the Hong Kong ETFs launch in, what was that, early 2024, just after BlackRock's ETFs launched in America. And now we're seeing more and more favorable and very interesting signposts come out of China. Again, today, they're still the world's second largest Bitcoin miner. I think they contribute something like 21% of the global Bitcoin hash rate. This is huge. Like, again, let's not forget, Bitcoin is supposed to be banned in China right now, but they've got 21% of the global Bitcoin hash rate. That's another little signpost. And now we have this news. And I think combining this with what we're about to cover, Opti, I think we're now starting to build a little bit of a case that China has nearly fully backflipped on Bitcoin.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's becoming very clear. And going further on this, again, couple days later, this was yesterday, I believe, we have broker Tinefeng unit applies for a Hong Kong crypto license. So another Hong Kong virtual asset linked service is trying to get, approval for crypto license. So it's becoming a popular trend now that it's not just one bank, it's not just one firm that wants to get Bitcoin exposure or sell and buy Bitcoin or issue ETFs. This is becoming a watershed moment. And going further, oh, it reloaded on me. This company also saw their stock surge 30% after obtaining the license. So, as much as the Bitcoin treasury companies or Bitcoin exposure companies are getting a lot of flack on Twitter lately, it's obviously doing a lot for their stock. And this is one of the incentives. It's like, hey, you announce you're a Bitcoiner, or rather getting Bitcoin exposure, you're probably going to get some good fiat returns. Now, moving forward, we do have, and this is the other stuff, DDC, an enterprise out of China, raised $528 million, $500 million to buy Bitcoin in a corporate treasury strategy. Again, as we've been saying on the show for a while, a lot of this stuff doesn't get done without the approval of, the head guy in charge over there, Xi. So if we're seeing the interest into Bitcoin via these Bitcoin treasury stocks, via the institutions, you can bet very clearly that there is a lot of interest from the people themselves and obviously the institutions there for Bitcoin. Now, this wasn't just in China, which is actually, I think, the more interesting aspect of this. Again, we've been kind of framing this in this idea that ever since Trump came out being pro-Bitcoin, he's made waves there and everyone has to take notice. The ripples are starting to figure their way out into society, into the culture. And every country, every head of institution, every head of financial institutions is starting to take notice. As we played for you the other day, we have billionaires talking about they can't sleep at night because they aren't buying Bitcoin. Well, you could guess, or at least make a educated guess here, that the people in power on the nation state level, the politicians, are also feeling the FOMO, feeling the fact that, hey, maybe I missed out. Maybe I need to reevaluate and open my mind a little bit on this Bitcoin thing. And to tie this all up, coming out of Russia, we have literally the first and second largest banks from Russia talking about Bitcoin-like products. So first one is Sberbank. Russia's biggest bank launches structured bond tied to Bitcoin. Sberbank, again, the largest bank in Russia, has launched a new structured bond that ties investor returns to the performance of Bitcoin and the US dollar to ruble exchange rate. This new financial product represents one of the first moves by a major Russian institution to offer Bitcoin-linked investments under recently updated national regulations. The structured bond is initially available over the counter to a limited group of qualified investors. Again, something we've been talking about for a while. When you hear news coming out of Russia, or even some of these bigger nation-state institutions, or even big firms, you know, not Wells Fargo. I forget what the bank is. Some of the more bigger banks in the U.S., they usually offer it to just the rich and high net worth individuals, people with more of a risk tolerance, have a lot of wealth just sitting around. And then they'll eventually let the layman out there. Then they'll eventually let you start to invest it. So according to the announcement, it allows investors to earn based on two factors: the price of performance of Bitcoin in US dollars and any strengthening of the dollar compared to the Russian ruble. Now, that would be interesting in and of itself. But we also saw Russia's second largest bank, VTB, launch Bitcoin buying and trading for all investors. Again, for all investors. Now, I did look into this, fact check a little bit. I can't find anything official coming out of VTB Bank, but they are reportedly planning to launch this very, very soon. The announcement came out the 28th, but it seems like they are seriously considering just allowing a free-for-all, all investors to buy into Bitcoin, start trading in Bitcoin. And they've actually been talking about this pilot program for a while now. So I think it's finally hitting the concrete. We're finally hitting the road here, and they are very seriously considering, or rather about to implement, Bitcoin trading for all investors. So again, we have a Chinese state-backed investment firm getting a crypto trading license in Hong Kong. We have more Hong Kong exchanges getting crypto license. We have the first and second largest banks in Russia talking about having Bitcoin-like products on their platforms. I think this is going to get crazy. I've been saying this the last couple of weeks. I literally had a text message with one of my friends. He's a Bitcoiner, and he's a full doomer in my iMessage this morning. He's like, we're not going to get over 120K, bro. Trust me, bro. Double top coming. And I'm like, dude, like, quit watching this doom stuff. Like, this is not a good look for you. And again, I mean, we have been talking about this. Like, we're seeing so many interesting news stories around Bitcoin. And we've all been wondering what's going on with the price. Are we double topping? You know, is this bull run over? Are we going to repeat 2021? And he literally said that, like, dude, 2021, it's over. If we don't pump past 100K in 14 days, bro, it's over for 2 years. And I'm like, dude, like, quit watching the doomer content out there. Like, everything I'm seeing is pointing to the opposite. I think, you know, we're still going to rip, probably end of year. It might be a quiet summer. I do kind of agree, though. If we do keep testing all-time high here a couple more times, then it's probably not a good look long term. But I'm still convinced we're gonna break this. Like, all this good news, all of this new FOMO coming from everywhere around the world is starting to make me believe, like, yo, this might be a bigger bull run, or rather a bull run on the size of 2017. It just, like, the math isn't mathing to me right now with all of this good news, with, you know, as Luke will probably explain later, like, his favorite topic of exchanges being depleted of Bitcoin. And we have some new information on that too. And the sentiment around Bitcoin has turned from, hey, you know, don't touch this thing, to you probably need 40% of this thing into your portfolio. It's hard to believe how this isn't going to rip by the end of the year. Like, maybe we still are in a 2026 cycle play out. Like, I'm not fully convinced we're in a super cycle yet, but I don't think 120K is top. I'm not seeing this double top meme. This just doesn't... It doesn't make sense to me. From what I'm seeing, I'm like, we still have a lot left in this machine. So, Luke, touch on the Russia, and then maybe drop a little tidbits, because I know we're going to get Actually, that'll be the topic for the culture. Are we double topping or not? So, hit Russia. Let's talk about, like, the implications here. The geopolitical nation-state FOMO is in full effect as far as I'm concerned.
I couldn't agree more. So Russia's really interesting. Like since they had their, was it $400 to $600 billion of US treasuries frozen by America in 2022, they've been showing some really interesting signs. You know, one minute they're using Bitcoin for trade, the next minute they ban their citizens from using it. The next minute it's going to be a global settlement asset, and then next minute they've banned it in like 7 regions in Russia. So Russia's really interesting. And I think they're interesting from multiple viewpoints. I mean, strategically, when we start thinking about Russia, they produce a lot of oil. They're either number 1, 2, or 3 based on, you know, global oil production numbers every year. They're always in that top 3. So for them to come out and start showing a lot of interest in Bitcoin, I think this is a big signpost, a very, very, very big signpost. Because again, think about how much excess energy there is in Russia. There's a lot of excess energy in Russia and the neighboring countries around Russia, as we're going to show you shortly with Kazakhstan. And this kind of explains why we are seeing so much interest in Bitcoin from these nations with excess energy. Again, let's think about the Kingdom of Bhutan. How did they accumulate so much Bitcoin? They were quietly mining Bitcoin since 2019 with that excess energy. They've got an abundance of hydroelectric energy all the way down there in the Asian area, so to say. They're on the border of China. What do we call that? Asian Peninsula? There's got to be a fancy name for that, Opti. But again, I think like watching these nations with an abundance of energy slowly but surely start flipping on Bitcoin. We know that we've got Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar's showed a lot of interest in Bitcoin, meeting Bukele in late 2023. Nothing's confirmed out of that Middle Eastern giant yet, but we're seeing a lot of signs. We're seeing a lot of signs that these countries are flip-flopping on Bitcoin. We've got Russia flip-flopping on Bitcoin. We got China flip-flopping on Bitcoin. Now we got Hong Kong, kind of proving what we suspected all along, and they're going deeper and deeper into Bitcoin nearly every month. So again, I think this bull run, I think it's, again, as we always say, Opti, nobody knows anything for certain. But the probabilities of this bull run being different and extra special and maybe a super cycle, I do think they're getting higher day by day by day, that we do continue to see the fundamentals strengthen around Bitcoin.
Well, you know, Luke, I always think I'm bullish until you come on the show and you make me sound like a bear. You know, I want to believe in super cycle. I just don't think we're there yet. I think maybe by next cycle, you know, 5 years from now, maybe we can very seriously talk about a super cycle, but I could be wrong. You know, hey, maybe my doomer friend could be right, but you know, a broken clock is right twice a day, and doomers and negative people, they are not the successful ones. So you stay optimistic and bull-tarded all day, every day. This is a lifestyle. Anyways, guys, we do have a lot of other news coming for you guys. One, Michael Saylor was just featured in a Wall Street Journal article for his incredible profits at Strategy, literally jumping him into the upper echelons of profits everywhere. Absolutely huge news. And then we have an interesting clip coming out of SoFi, which is, you know, a fintech investment app. And they're talking about using Bitcoin now. Again, this information, the Bitcoin signal is spreading everywhere, and we're starting to see Bitcoin pop up in every corner right now, from investment firms, you know, fintech companies, nation states, banks. And he does say something very interesting in this clip that I think Luke and I will be able to chat about. And then, of course, to wrap up the show, I'm just going to give Luke the floor, and we're just going to get stupidly bullish to counter all this bear 120K top, double top nonsense here. But of course, before we move on, I do want to remind you, smash the like button, comment on this episode right now. Tell us if me and Luke are too bull-tarded. You know, tell us if you think it's going to be 120K top or not. And of course, hit the subscribe button, because we're dropping a lot of content on our show, on our channel. Do not miss it. And of course, one huge shout out to our boys over at the Bitcoin Well. Go to bitcoinwell.com, sign up today, and get 3 chances to win 1 million sats when you toss a coin into the Bitcoin wishing well. Again, you get 3 when you sign up using the promo code SimplyBTC. And the reason we love Bitcoin Well, it's very simple. They are Bitcoiners building a platform for Bitcoiners, and they are doing it the right way. It is self-custody by default, which literally means they have never lost a sat. They have never lost your Bitcoin. Once you send them their fiat, it clears. You get the Bitcoin directly into your wallet. They never hold it, and this ensures that you never get rug pulled. This is why we love the boys over at Bitcoin Well, because they make sure you get Bitcoin the right way. Okay, on that note, let's get into the numbers.
I want to tell you guys about our sponsor, Stamp Seed. Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Are your seed words really secure? Stamp Seed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you'll need to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates instead of writing them down on paper. Don't do that. Paper sucks. You want to literally stamp your seed into this plate of titanium. Your words are actually stamped into the metal plate with this hammer. So once your words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and your pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamp seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They are also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and most importantly, because this is generational wealth, time-proof. All things that paper is not, allowing you to hodl your Bitcoin for the long haul. I mean, here is the plate that they crushed. They put in water, they put a blowtorch to it, and as you can see, the words have survived. Stamp your seed on Stamp Seed. And you can use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on their store. Head over to stampseed.com today.
Sorry, guys, choked on my saliva. All right, we're over here on Clark Moody's dashboard, and the current Bitcoin price is $106,080, and that's literally a minus 5.3% from all-time high. And we have doomers in the chat. I have doomers DMing me and texting me, bro. You guys need to lower that time preference. We've been at 100K for like 30 days. We're all bored. It's like it's over. I mean, I remember when 100K was the moonshot here. Now we're like, it's done, man. It's going to zero. Absolutely hilarious. Anyways, the sats per dollar, aka how much Bitcoin you can buy for a single dollar, aka how much the dollar is worth in Bitcoin, is currently at 943 sats per dollar. The block height is 903,553. The market cap in fiat terms is 2.11 trillion. And it went down a little bit. We're at 8.98% of the gold market cap. And then, of course, the total percentage of Bitcoin that will ever be issued, I repeat, that will ever be issued is 94.69%, with a realized monetary inflation of 0.84%. Literally the lowest inflation, or realized inflation, because there is no actual inflation in Bitcoin, is at 0.84%. All right, guys. So as I was telling you, I really want you to pay attention to what is said in this clip. You can see from Carl Menger on Twitter. He goes, breaking, SoFi Bank with 11 million plus users and $38 billion of assets under management is now using Bitcoin for global payments because it's faster, cheaper, and more secure. Now, that is the headline, but there's something else that he says in this clip that I think is kind of a projection of things to come. He says it very clearly, something we've been saying on this show for a long time, rather, ever since the beginning of the year, ever since last November, or actually before November, that when Trump got elected, we might see a whole new regulatory view on Bitcoin. And now, again, we are starting to see those ripples play out. So again, pay close attention to what he says here.
First, we're a digital-only company, so we need to use technology to provide all of these services to you. We want you to have the ability to pay anybody, anywhere, any way that you want. And so one of the products we're launching, international payments, will allow you to use US dollars to pay someone in a foreign country in their local fiat currency. That dollar will be transferred into Bitcoin, transmitted over the blockchain, and then at the destination converted back into fiat currency. Today, the remittance market or international market is close to $100 billion from the US. We think we can provide a service that's faster, cheaper, more accessible, and most importantly, very secure. In addition to that, we know our members want to invest in cryptocurrency. We used to offer the product, but we didn't take past as the future. So we went out and asked our members, and 60% of our members would like to have cryptocurrency offered from someone like SoFi that is a nationally licensed bank. And that is a big change. In the past, banks couldn't offer buying and selling cryptocurrency, but they can now. And so our bank license is now useful, not just to take deposits that are insured and lend them, but to actually provide a very safe and reliable way to buy and sell cryptocurrency.
Okay. Did you hear that last part? This is something Luke and I and Nico have been saying on this show for a long time. Remember, we used to do whole shows around this. The 3 things to take Bitcoin to, what was it, $5 million by 2030? I forget the year. Was the ETF. We've seen that. Most successful ETF launch ever. 2, FASB accounting rules, which we will have a follow-up story in the news after this segment. And 3, banks being allowed to custody and loan against your Bitcoin. This is happening now. I know there's been a lot of pushback recently on this idea, but as you heard him say, we are a nationally registered bank. And now, since the approval that we can start to use and dabble Bitcoin, 60% of our clients want Bitcoin. Or crypto here. We all know it's Bitcoin. The part about him saying, like, they trust us, bro. They want to get Bitcoin from us instead of these shady exchanges. And, maybe they don't trust Coinbase, but they'll trust us because we're a bank and we've been around and we wear the suit and we're not, these shadowy super coders. Now, I might have a point of contention to that. I personally... I don't trust banks. I literally became a man after the 2008 financial crisis. And so that's why I'm a Bitcoiner in the first place. I'm very skeptical of these financial institutions. But as you heard him say, now that they got the green light, they are diving headfirst into it. And of course, there was some kind of like 2016, 2017, what do you call it, buzzwords in there, like we're going to use the dollar and convert it to Bitcoin and then send it over the blockchain because it's cheaper and faster and more secure. And then it goes into your local fiat currencies. It is sounding a little bit, buzzwordy, but I can't really fault these people when they come into Bitcoin. Everyone was new. You probably all used the buzzwords. Very few of us come in and are just toxic Bitcoiners. Now it's becoming easier to just, sidestep all of that nonsense and understand the Bitcoin message very clearly. But the point remains the same. The floodgates are opening. So if you think it's going to be 120K, top here, double top here, bro, get out the chat. I don't know what you're doing here. This is a full bull copium here. This is bull tard central. This is what we do. Always orange tinted glasses like what Luke's got here. Anyways, Luke, let's touch on that because I know we're going to be able to chat about Saylor and then get super bullish at the end. But what's your thoughts hearing this clip? I don't think you saw this morning, so this might be a fresh take.
Live reaction. I didn't see it this morning. I think it's interesting. I think SoFi is yet again another one of these massive institutions who people listen to.
Yep.
Yes, there was some buzzwords, but it's like social signaling here. You've got Uncle Larry shilling our bags. We've got Mexico's second richest billionaire shilling our bags. We've even got Michael Saylor, the man with nearly a $10 billion net worth, shilling our bags and going on CNBC and destroying these silly arguments that that the Bitcoin skeptics are making on national news. So I think that's the biggest signal here. Like Trump, like that clip we played for you guys at the beginning of today's show, when we were talking a little bit more about that, global superpower race that we're seeing between America, Russia, and China. Trump kind of looked like he took a step back, so to say. He was like, yeah, my sons are in Bitcoin. Did you notice that, Opti? He was kind of like, yeah, my sons are doing this. I don't know what the play or that little pivot was there, because when he was campaigning, he was like, I want every Bitcoin to be made, mined, and minted in America.
Well, Luke, though, that is a good point. But before that, he did say, I was in Bitcoin before I even announced that I was in Bitcoin, before I announced I was in the presidency. And it really, Trump's hilarious, first and foremost, but it really does sound like people that are like, yeah, I was in Bitcoin in 2007, bro. You're like, what? So I thought that was hilarious, but yeah, you're true. You're right. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it was a valid interjection. It's an interesting point. And again, who knows how hardcore of a Bitcoin maximalist, people like Donald Trump and this SoFi gentleman are, but just the fact that they're getting the, they're putting the Bitcoin message out there, and we're getting the, the Bitcoin stamp of approval on national news from these big names. This is what is actually creating the real change, not because we're appealing to authority and we're, blessing the politicians for buying Bitcoin. No. But what these entities do by being more neutral to positive on Bitcoin in the public arena, this all of a sudden de-risks Bitcoin. And every single day it makes it easier for really big names to adopt Bitcoin. Even last night, I was watching a YouTuber. He's a fitness influencer. He's got 700,000 subs, but he put up a video out of nowhere, and it's like, this is my my Bitcoin thesis or something. I watched it. I was like, what? Guy from like 7 or 8 years ago. He's got nearly 1 million followers, and now he's even posting videos about Bitcoin. It's insane. And this is what allows the public treasury FOMO to accelerate. When you have so much positive rules, regulations, and when Bitcoin's de-risked in the public arena by these big institutions, this is what allows the real change to happen. And that is the, 800,000 Bitcoin that's been bought by public companies over the past 18 months. This is the real thing that ignites the bull run. It's not, politicians saying nice things about Bitcoin on the news. That's not really meaningful. It's more what that does as a, the downstream that creates the real change. And that is Bitcoin being de-risked and allowing these big boys to allocate to Bitcoin in size.
Yeah, totally. No, I think that's a huge point. And we've been definitely saying that same thing in various ways on the show. It's like, look, as much as you may not like the Larry Finks of the world or the Donald Trumps of the world or, the biggest banks in the world, etc., the fact that they are now talking about Bitcoin is a sign of the times here. As you were saying, this is the least risky time to be buying Bitcoin, period. Like now, by all metrics, I think would say this is the best time to buy Bitcoin, bar none. Unless you're like saying it's going to double top, and like the bull runs over, then, maybe you're going to have to still earn your stripes if you buy the top this time around. But I'm not convinced we're at the top yet. From all the metrics I'm seeing, this is the best time to be buying Bitcoin. It's the least risky time. We have literally the tacit approval from the biggest institutions of the world, the #1 financial advisors in the world, nation state leaders of the world are talking about getting into Bitcoin. If you are still skeptical around Bitcoin, it's either two things. You're digging your head in the sand, or you really just haven't done a remedial amount of homework into Bitcoin. Like you haven't dug deeper than what you see on, CNN or MSNBC or Fox on these 1 or 2 minute clips about how Bitcoin's boiling the oceans, or, criminals are using it. And then, like all of this crazy nonsense that they use to FUD Bitcoin and literally scare you away from the exit door, scare you away from saving in something that cannot be destroyed, debased, basically scaring you away from the life that you've always wanted to live, because you can't survive on the dollar, or you have to, go to them to give you your trading portfolio so that you have to pay them. Like, cut out the middleman, cut off the television, and come watch us bulltards here on Simply Bitcoin, and we'll get you right. What did Uncle Rockstar say about us? Come to Simply Bitcoin because we're scamming you into profits and savings since 2020. Let's go. Oh man, that's good. I love that. All right, let's pivot here. I do want to touch on this Michael Saylor story, which I found very interesting. So Saylor's all in the news, obviously, biggest holder of Bitcoin. He's probably the biggest mouthpiece for Bitcoin. He's orange pilling all of these strategy copycats. He is becoming a Wall Street darling right now, for better or worse. Wall Street has taken notice with Saylor. They didn't care about all of us here stacking Bitcoin, making outsized profits without a middleman. But once Saylor came in and started to doing some financial trickery, some financial engineering like only a rocket scientist can do, now they are taking notice of what we're doing here. So big headline coming out of the Wall Street Journal. Let's touch on it.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, Ledin, the leader in Bitcoin-backed loans. Unlock the liquidity in your Bitcoin without having to sell your Bitcoin. They've issued $9 billion in loans to over 10,000 customers since 2018. I absolutely love these guys. Not only do I have an account with them, but I also have a loan. And what I love about them is that there are no monthly payments, and you could pay back the loan at any time. As soon as you send your Bitcoin as collateral, you'll have cash in your account within 24 hours. Over 1,000 five-star customer reviews, and they've never lost a single dollar or sat of customer money. Go to learn.ledn.io/simply today, and you'll get 0.25% off your first loan. I want to give a shout out to our partner, sat123.com. Sovereignty isn't just about your money. It's about your communications too. When the grid goes down, most people go dark. Cell towers fail in hurricanes, cyber attacks, and blackouts. But satellite phones, they don't rely on local infrastructure. Iridium has 77 satellites in orbit, giving you a direct line anywhere in the US, even offshore. If you hold your own Bitcoin keys, you should hold your own comms too. Sat123.com also has everything you need to start building your Bitcoin citadel. Starlink, battery backups, Faraday bags to protect your hardware wallets, and much, much more. It's a one-stop shop for anyone serious about resilience and off-grid independence. Stay connected, stay independent, stay sovereign. Go to sat123.com/simply today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the store. I want to give a shout out to our partner, Cold Card. If you're serious about self-custody, Cold Card is the best Bitcoin hardware wallet. There is no second best. The Cold Card Q is the ultimate air-gapped Bitcoin signing device, complete with a full keyboard, large screen, camera, NFC support, and much more. Do you prefer something sleeker? The MK4 is trusted by hardcore Bitcoiners around the world. Both are built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners, secure and open source. Simply Bitcoin viewers get 5% off with promo code SIMPLY. Take self-custody of your Bitcoin today with Cold Card.
Alrighty then, guys, let's dive into this article. So I was wrong. I misremembered. It wasn't from Wall Street Journal. It was from Bloomberg. But I don't have a Bloomberg account here, so I'm getting it from Wahoo Finance, okay? Same story, but it's free here and, you know, not breaking any rules on YouTube. All right, so the Bloomberg headline that we're reading off of Yahoo Finance is Michael Saylor's strategy to join Wall Street elite with $14 billion windfall. And also, yesterday, I think... they are strategies eligible to be added in the S&P 500. I think it got added to the Russell 200. So, you know, strategy, or rather Bitcoin and Michael Saylor are on Wall Street's doorstep. But we got this headline here, and it's not really about the fact that strategy might join the S&P 500. It's really more of the impact that Bitcoin has had on, as Saylor would say, his zombie company, and has catapulted Saylor into the highest echelons of traditional finance, of finance in general. And of course, it's all backed by Bitcoin. The TLDR here, or rather the theme here, the reading between the lines here is, all you need to do is follow what Michael Saylor does on a personal level, and you too can escape poverty like everyone else. Everyone is having a hard time in the dollar right now, and you have to become an investor. All you have to do is save in Bitcoin, and if you do have some financial engineering capabilities, maybe you want to do what Michael Saylor has done. Anyways, let's get into this article. Michael Saylor's strategy is likely to register an unrealized gain of about $14 billion in the second quarter, putting the once floundering enterprise software maker turned leverage Bitcoin proxy among the select ranks of corporate titans such as Amazon and JP Morgan Chase. Unlike the 10 or so multinationals whose operating profits are expected to exceed $10 billion last quarter by generating billions of dollars in sales, the former MicroStrategy Inc. can attribute the eye-popping results to a rebound in the price of Bitcoin and a fairly recent accounting change, of course, FASB, or SAB 121, that was recalled, when it comes to valuing its massive holdings of the cryptocurrency. Strategy is forecast to post only about $112.8 million in second quarter revenue, from the software business, according to analysts surveyed by Bloomberg News. The likely record profit from the 3-month ended June 30 follows a barrage of criticisms from naysayers. People are saying, he's got some suits right now saying that they're not handling their finances correctly. Of course, Saylor says it's all financial gibberish. But Saylor definitely has a right to feel vindicated, said Mark Palmer, an analyst at Benchmark Capital, who has maintained a buy rating on Strategy since February 2024. He's had people criticizing him for more than 4 years now, and his company has outperformed all other stocks and even the S&P by a long mile. Strategy shares have soared over 3,300% since Saylor began buying Bitcoin in the middle of 2020 as a hedge against inflation. Bitcoin is up around 1,000% during the same period, while the S&P 500 has increased around 115%. The stock rose 40% in the second quarter as the S&P climbed 11%. And then, of course, in the first quarter, Strategy adopting the accounting change. And this is kind of the big thing. This is why Saylor was saying for a while that 3 things that really unlocked Bitcoin's capital. One of them was the FASB accounting rule, and this is where they lay it out. So Strategy adopted an accounting change that requires valuing the firm's now roughly $64 billion in Bitcoin at market prices. Strategy and fellow corporate buyers of Bitcoin are now recognizing the unrealized changes that often produce big swings in earnings. Strategy posted a record $4.2 billion loss the first quarter, which saw Bitcoin slump 12%. And prior to the accounting change, Strategy had been classifying its Bitcoin holdings similar to intangible assets like patents or trademarks. That designation for its strategy to permanently mark down the value of its holdings when the price of Bitcoin dropped below the previous carrying value. Gains could only be recognized when the tokens were sold. So this is a huge thing. This is one of the big, I think, deterrents to a lot of companies to add Bitcoin to their company strategy, is that you can basically never actually put the unrealized gain on your balance sheet. It would always look like a loss on your balance sheet, and it would really make your financials look incredibly bad for investors and shareholders. And so that was one of the big things stopping financial institutions from acquiring Bitcoin. But now, as we're seeing, Saylor has implemented the FASB accounting rules. I think he was actually the first one to do it. And it's making his stock, or rather his financials, go absolutely nuclear, pushing him up next to the Amazons and the JP Morgan Chase. And now the real story here, guys, is, of course, all he did was buy Bitcoin. Yes, he's doing a bunch of different products and he's leveraging the fiat system, but the theme here, the read between the lines story here, is Bitcoin has ushered his zombie company into literally the biggest household names possible. And that, of course, was only possible with Bitcoin. Now, you don't have to be Michael Saylor. You don't have to have you don't have to be a billionaire with a huge public corporation to follow the Michael Saylor strategy. All you have to do is save in Bitcoin, and you will also start to, get the increase in purchasing powers. Like, it's the simplest strategy ever. Of course, I'm not saying the Saylor strategy is simple, because there is a lot of financial engineering that is above my pay grade. But the story remains the same. If you adopt Bitcoin, if you incorporate Bitcoin into your personal finances, then it's a totally different game. And I know right now, a lot of people are struggling. Inflation is kind of under control, but everyone is kind of feeling that grocery prices are more expensive than ever. We're seeing all kinds of uncertainty in the traditional financial world. There's a lot of uncertainty going on in the world right now. And the most certain thing that usually you want to invest in at times of uncertainty is a good money. Bitcoin is that good money. Bitcoin is that solution. And now we're seeing that, hey, whether you like Saylor, whether you think that, strategy or Bitcoin treasury stocks or shitcoins or whatever you want to say, whatever negative you want to say about it, the point remains the same. Bitcoin is in all of the big headlines now. All things around Bitcoin is starting to make huge news. It's starting to basically outperform on every metric. Based on every metric around here, it's getting incredibly bullish for Bitcoin. Where Saylor's going out there, he's doing the best spokesperson speaking talks possible. He's in the Bloomberg. You know, Wall Street Journal just dropped an article about the Kingdom of Bhutan. We're seeing Trump talk about Bitcoin. We're seeing China start to pivot towards Bitcoin. We're seeing Russia pivot towards Bitcoin. And then, of course, everyone here that's saved in Bitcoin that gets quote unquote scammed into profits here at Simply Bitcoin is seeing their life improve. This is the power of Bitcoin, is securing your purchasing power so you don't get broke slowly. This is the revolution here, but you need to take Bitcoin into custody. Yes, maybe you're not a fan of the Bitcoin treasury stocks. Maybe, you know, you're not a fan of quote paper Bitcoin, but the message remains the same. Bitcoin is entering the collective mind share of society, and it's showing without a doubt that it's improving people's lives, it's improving businesses, and it soon will improve nation states, or rather, it already did, El Salvador and Bhutan. Like, from every metric, it is almost incredible that we're seeing Bitcoin, and I hate to use the Nico phrase "win this hard." You know, I know Trump came out. You're gonna get tired of winning, but it really is like all the things that Bitcoiners have been saying for the last 15 years. Like it's starting to happen right now. Like it is happening now, and there's still a lot of doomers out there. They're like, "No, man, it's not happening how I thought it would." That might be a personal problem, bro, because Bitcoin is absolutely just doing what it's supposed to be doing, where it's supposed to be doing, and at the highest levels possible. So, you know, Saylor, you may not like him, but I think he's done an incredible job as a spokesperson or maybe even a mascot for Bitcoin. He ran an incredible playbook. I've been saying for a while, a masterclass on the corporate level of what to do with Bitcoin. And now everyone is taking note. I think this is absolutely insane, that strategy, just by buying Bitcoin, and of course, it's a little more complicated than that, is now making record-breaking profits here and listed next to Amazon and JP Morgan Chase. It's absolutely nuts. So, Luke, what's your thoughts on this story?
Yes, I mean, think about it. Just 5 years ago, Michael Saylor was laughed at. The big mainstream corporate press spokespeople were writing articles laughing at him, dunking on him. They were saying Bitcoin was going to flop. He was going to sell his Bitcoin. In 2022, everybody said, with confidence, mind you, when Bitcoin was under $20,000, there's a big narrative going around saying, oh, they're going to try to push the price of Bitcoin down to $3,000 to liquidate Saylor. This was, again, like, big accounts with multiple tens of thousands of followers on Twitter. I won't name and shame, but they were very confident in those predictions. And look what's happened now. Michael's taken his company from being a $1 billion penny stock in 2020. Again, it's a bit bigger than a penny stock, but now he's worth 100 billion. He's 100x'd his company. Now, again, no disrespect to MicroStrategy calling it a penny stock. It certainly wasn't. And he has had a profitable business for a long time, but to see what has happened to his company over the past 5 years, it's been nothing short of monumental. Okay, I think I wrote an article in 2022 saying that Michael Saylor is going to become the world's most richest person, and there will come a day where the world's most wealthy companies and billionaires are forced to face the only question that matters, I believe, in the 2020s. And that is, if you want to be the richest nation state, the richest individual, or the richest corporation, there is only one metric that matters. And that is how much Bitcoin you own. And I made the case way back in 2022. I said, if a nation state or a government or an individual wants to become richer than Michael Saylor, they will need to buy more than the around 100,000 Bitcoin that he had at that time. Obviously, things have changed now. Michael now holds about 600,000 Bitcoin. And now it's getting like really spicy and really interesting. Again, at the time, people called me a whacker back in 2022 writing articles like that. You know, but this is the Michael Saylor MicroStrategy flywheel. It is playing out. And he's using the exact same playbook that Hugo Stein's used way back in the early 1920s in Germany. Again, he was just an averagely moderately wealthy man with a business, but he used debt to buy assets that appreciated in that Weimar hyperinflation, and he ended up becoming the world's richest man in a space of about 5 years. And again, I've been writing about this for multiple years. Michael's going to do the exact same thing, but he's going to become the world's richest man. And it's just now starting to become a little bit more accepted, that crazy view or that crazy theory. As today, there's only 6 companies in the world who can actually buy more Bitcoin than Michael Saylor. And there's only one company who could actually pull it off feasibly and quickly, and that is obviously Facebook, Meta. They have a treasury of something like $70 to $80 billion, and Facebook is the only company that has more cash on the balance sheet and has the ability for a CEO to make a very quick, very rash, what some would call risky decision to put their entire treasury into Bitcoin tomorrow and try to buy more Bitcoin than what Michael has accumulated over at MicroStrategy. There's only one company who can do it, and I don't think they're going to do it. Again, time is running out. As the price of Bitcoin, again, on a monthly basis, it kind of looks pretty boring. But if you look at it 3 months ago, we're at 70K. So again, I think time is running out, and Michael is now one of the biggest names on Wall Street. And I just think it's inevitable that he will become not only the world's richest man, but he'll also have the world's most valuable company. And I'm just sat back with popcorn waiting for that day to come.
Yeah, if Zuck really wants to be a Chad, then he just smash buys the whole holding in Bitcoin. That would be great. All right, let's have a little fun here. We're gonna get a little bullish here. Actually, yeah, let's just get to this.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, HIVE Digital Technology. Why HIVE in 2025? Unstoppable growth. As the first ever public miner, HIVE's position to quadruple their global footprint, making them one of the world's fastest growing miners in 2025. And with elite operations that consistently top the industry in Bitcoin mined per exahash, HIVE's now headquartered in the USA. They're lean and mean, they're green and clean, and they're rewriting the playbook on sustainable Bitcoin mining. You can catch the latest buzz at HIVE Digital Tech or at hivedigitaltech.com. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Casa. Casa makes self-custody easy and secure. As a Bitcoiner, I care about holding my own private keys, but multi-sig can sometimes get tricky. Casa nails it with a multi-key security. So even if one key gets lost or stolen, your Bitcoin stays safe. And you don't give up custody, meaning no one could access your Bitcoin but you. No seed phrase anxiety, no single point of failure. I've been telling my friends and family about Casa for years. Their UX and UI on their app is by far the best in the industry. Inheritance planning is built in, and they even offer Casa for Business if you're thinking about a Bitcoin treasury. Hit up casa.io today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 10% off Casa Standard or Casa Premium. Head over to casa.io.
All right, Luke, I'm going to put you on the spot here, and let's just rehash the text message that I got this morning, that it's over, bro. If Bitcoin doesn't break 100K in 14 days, you know, we're going into a bear market, double top. I know you've been hearing all of this stuff. I know you're the most bullish person I know. I'm sure I've heard this pitch, but specifically, are we double topping? Is 120K going to be the top of this cycle? What would be your response to this?
So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to try to show you a chart that I think accurately predicts the price path.
Let's go.
For the next 10 years. So many people are drawing these power law curves on the Bitcoin chart. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Can you zoom in a little bit?
I'm going to try my best. Let's see what we got here. But I think like this, again, when we start thinking about Bitcoin on an exponential basis and we start understanding that Bitcoin is, again, I believe it's the economic singularity. I think it's going to be adopted by everyone around the world. You're going to have to adopt Bitcoin. There is no second best. There is no other alternative. It is just like gunpowder. You either adopt it or you die. You either adopt Bitcoin or your savings metaphorically die and they will melt away. Very metaphorical. Let's double stamp that one. So again, that's what's going to happen over the next 10 or 20 years. We're just now starting to see the the floodgates open. We're now just starting to see a lot of these bigger companies that Opti, we didn't get the chance to mention, but think about this. Microsoft's, Amazon, all of these big, huge companies are now having shareholders write to them and force them to consider putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet. So I just think, to 2B's comment in the chat, 100 trillion in 10 years? Come on, that's bearish. Honestly, I genuinely think that's bearish. Like, again, I could talk about this for 20 minutes, but if you just look at how technologies get adopted, they get adopted in these exponential waves. Look at the automobile displacing horses in the early 1900s. That happened in 12 years. The automobile went from like 1% adoption to 90% adoption in like 12 years. Horses pretty much died off really quickly. And again,
they're still around, but horse as a mechanism for transportation dwindled away.
That's the one. It shrunk by 90%. So I think, to McHoddle's comment in the chat, S-curve, baby. Right now, we are in the very early stages of Bitcoin's adoption curve. Again, like I've been screaming from the rooftop, I believe 2020 was the inflection point. That was like the end of era number one for Bitcoin. Pre-2020, it was era number one. It was Bitcoin for the cypherpunks, for the very fringe individuals. There was no mainstream awareness or adoption of Bitcoin pre-2020, but I think 2020 changed everything. And now we're kind of in the more interesting phase for Bitcoin's life. And I've been screaming it from the rooftops, between 2020 and 2031, that will be the second era of Bitcoin's adoption curve. And I think things are going to manifest themselves really quickly here over the next 5 to 10 years. I think when Bitcoin hits, when the supply of Bitcoin on exchanges hits zero, that's when we really start to see Bitcoin hockey stick up on the charts that we've got on screen right here. So I think anybody predicting double tops, or another narrative I've seen is this left translated cycle, right? This idea that Bitcoin's going to now go sideways for 4 years and enter a 4-year bear market. That's nearly as laughable as the power opinion or these quantile models or these other models that think that they can just predict Bitcoin forever. Okay, I think Bitcoin is so impossible to predict. Again, 7,000 years, we've never seen a monetary transition like what we're seeing today. We are literally transitioning from analog forms of money to digital forms of money for the first time in history. We do know through the 700 currency crashes and hyperinflations and monetary transitions that we have seen in history, they always happen in an exponential process. It's very slowly and gradually in the early stages, and then it all happens at once, suddenly, gradually, then suddenly. Great book, Parker Lewis hat tip, by the way. But again, Bitcoin's going to be the same. And I'm just shocked that people think we're going to see diminishing returns and it's just digital gold and it's going to slowly but predictably increase by a 20 and a 30% CAGR for the next 10 years. I just don't think it's going to happen. I genuinely think it's more likely Bitcoin goes to zero, then we see some sort of like very predictable, very low diminishing returns growth, and Bitcoin's somewhat boring at, 500K to $1 million asset in the next 15 to 20 years. I genuinely think it's more likely Bitcoin dies and goes to zero than that happening. And again, a lot of people say that's crazy, but just look at the history of money. Look at the history of technology. We never see a monetary or a technological transition that happens in a predictable fashion. It always happens in an exponential fashion. And I just think we've hit the inflection point. I just think all of these bullish news stories that we bring you guys on a daily basis are just little hints and little signposts that you need to clench a certain area of your body, because things are going to get really interesting here in the next 5 years. So yeah, I just don't think we double tops. Again, I could be wrong. Again, something I like to really make very clear here. I don't know where the price of Bitcoin's going. I have no idea. But what I will say is that traditional markets, financial markets, they always punish the consensus opinion. And the consensus opinion is diminishing returns forever. Bitcoin's going to top at 120, 150, maybe 200K this cycle. That will confirm diminishing returns stays intact for another cycle. I just think That's the consensus opinion. I'm going to bet the other way. I'm going to bet it's going to go the other way. And again, I'm not saying it's impossible that we top at 180K and we have another 12-month bear market and a 70% correction, down to 60 or 70K. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think it's much less likely than what I think the consensus is today. That's a few of my thoughts there on the Bears calling a double top at 120K up there. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, I could point at charts. I really do like the recent kind of model or framework of the business cycle. I like the liquidity cycle, but I think the business cycle one is doing really well. And maybe I'll bring up one just for shits and giggles. But I've been saying for a while, literally, I don't even remember when I started saying this. It was at some point in 2024 where I kept saying like something about it. And this was still when Bitcoin was at 30K or something, to 40K maybe. I'm like, I don't know, my gut instinct is telling me 250, 300K is reasonable for this cycle. And I've been holding pretty strong on that. I think that's kind of the mark that I'm looking at. Again, this could be the new 100K cycle. I was wrong about that one. But from all the metrics that we're seeing, it does feel like that is a total possibility. Like 150K right now. I know from the bottom, what was the bottom of the bear, like 30K or something like that, of the most recent one. That would be a 5X, so that would kind of play out to maybe some more credence to the idea that this is a double top, like a 5X here. I forget what the last cycle was. I think it was like a 6X or something like that, and we were super disappointed about that. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that that's where we are, but I'm just convinced like 150K just doesn't sound right for me for a 2025, parabolic year of Bitcoin. Now, of course, there is the idea of maybe there's more paper Bitcoin, maybe these institutions coming into Bitcoin, shorting it, even though they do have some, long exposure. They're really just trying to siphon off their management fees out of this. And that could be a whole new dynamic that's at play. And that maybe it's not only dampening the volatility on the downside, but it's also dampening the volatility on the upside. Like I totally think that that's a possibility here, but I'm also extremely bullish, and you guys know me. I love any kind of data that confirms my bias on things. So I've been looking. I really like this account. Again, I don't know what these metrics are, but it is kind of replaying this idea. We saw Joe Burnett kind of come out and saying the copper gold ratio business cycle is bottoming out right now, and it's pretty much predicted all the other bull runs. This guy Tech Dev, he popped up on my Twitter a couple of months ago, and he's been playing this chart out. Again, I don't know the metrics here, so I'm kind of flying blind, but again, I like any kind of chart or data that confirms my bias here. I am a trust the science expert when it confirms my bias. If it doesn't confirm my bias, I ignore it. But whatever this is here, I don't know what it looks like, the business cycle to me. But as you can see, when it bottoms out, things start getting excited here. And guess where we are now in July 2025? It is bottoming out. And, you're looking at these numbers here, maybe 200, 300K is in play. So again, if this plays out, if this is our new stock to flow power law, what was the power curve, quantile model? Hey, if it helps us stay bullish and confirms my bias here, I love it. And yeah, I'm not much of a chart boy. I do look at charts just to kind of understand what's going on in the markets here, but whatever this is here, Tech Dev, we might have to reach out. Someone chat on here. What is this? Okay, actually we have an explanation. I don't know if this is true, but he says explanation. So basic, okay, this is the okay, so this is the same thing, gold copper ratio here. Business cycle meme that we kind of did, what was that, Monday of last week or Tuesday of last week? I forget. So he's kind of confirming my bias here. So I love this. I love to confirm my own bias. So part of me is just like, it just can't be over. If anything, it could be a sell in May and go away type scenario, that is kind of a heuristic for all markets right now. You know, people got to take their summer trip to the Amalfi Coast or whatever. You know, they got to lock in some gains and they got to go take their family on their summer vacation. And then when they come back into the office, end of year for Q3 and fall is when we start getting super bullish. But, you know, part of me, and again, I'm just from a heuristic point, from a gut feeling, I'm like, 150K just doesn't sound right to me. And kind of what you said, Luke. You know, the consensus is right now, everyone's saying something very similar. I remember at the Bitcoin conference, most of the people that I was talking to were saying something similar, like, oh, you know, I think it's going to go to 150K and that's the top of this cycle. And I just like, it just doesn't jive with me. I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like 150K is not the top. Like I'm still 200, 300K that's where we're going. So, you know, if you're a double top maxi, drop a bear emoji in the chat so everyone can make fun of you, because me and Luke are staying bull-tarded.
I'll make fun of them. I want to see some bear emojis in the chat, because I didn't think we're going to 200 or 300K. I mean, yeah, sure, maybe this cycle, but I'm more interested in where we're going this decade. And I think the chart I pulled up is actually going to prove, I think we're going to 200 to 300 million this decade. Like in the next
okay.
Yeah, that's where we're going. This is how quickly this thing's going to unfold. Again, technologies, they happen in exponential curves. We've talked about the multiplier effect yesterday just a little bit. We showed you guys today the multiplier effect. It's about 6x if you use a conservative 2-year average. But Opti showed me some data and it was like 25x in the short term. When you start running really funky maths, like for example, what happens if $100 trillion wants to flow into Bitcoin? Again, that's only 10% of global assets. Imagine slapping a 25x multiplier on that. That takes you to what, $2.5 quadrillion? So if just 10% of the world's money wants to flow into Bitcoin, it's got a $2.5 quadrillion market cap. And that means the price of Bitcoin would be something like $110, $120 million a coin. That's if just 10% of the world's wealth wants to flow into Bitcoin. Over the next 10 years, I think that's going to happen. And again, these $500,000 predictions, $1 million predictions, $1.3 million power opinions, they're all wrong. I think the big picture here, when you zoom out and you have a look at Bitcoin on a multi-thousand and multi-100,000 year time frame, like I like to do with all the charts that I show you guys, like we need to think bigger about Bitcoin. We need to think far bigger about Bitcoin. I think every single technological revolution we've seen invented over the past 100,000 years, it's all been a precursor for energy money. Energy money is the pinnacle of an invention that a civilization can create. Again, everybody asks the questions. Fermi paradox. Where is life in their galaxies, in the hundreds and thousands of other planets out there? Where is the other civilizations? We've been around for 4.5 billion years. Where is the rest of them? They're not here because they didn't find energy money. I know it's a big thesis. It could be a little bit out there, but again, we need to be thinking about things on 100 and multi-thousand year time frame. And when we do, $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, that's all a rounding error. The big picture here is hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars per coin in today's purchasing power. That's where we're going. And again, I think that's just not many people in Bitcoin are talking about that, except for my good friend in Australia, Peter Dunworth. He's run the numbers. He's shown a hypothetical scenario of how we get to $7 billion Bitcoin. And I'm on board for it. Checks out.
Yo, what is in the water down there in Australia to make you guys so bullish? It's absolutely incredible. You know, the Halfini $10 million per Bitcoin, that sounds crazy to a lot of people. We've been hearing $100 million, you know, dollar sat parity. Then the Australians come out and they're like, nope, $7 billion per coin. It's happening. You're like, bro, chill out. Like, hey, I love as much opium as possible as the other guy does, but $7 billion. You know, one day we'll look back at this and be like, okay, maybe Luke and Peter were right about this, but that starts to sound crazy. Like $1 million is like, you know, when I got into Bitcoin, like 10K was the moonshot. And even then we're like, yeah, 100K, like it's going to happen. Maybe it took longer than we thought it would. And now everyone's saying the same thing about $1 million. So maybe Luke will be the same thing in 20, 30 years that we're saying about $1 billion per Bitcoin. But I'm kind of with everyone else. Like, can we just like break out of the 100K first, man, before we start saying 7 billion per coin?
Hey, I could be wrong. I don't know if you can see I don't know if you can see the source I shared with you, Opti, that chart I've got for you. But I think
yeah, I'll pull it up real quick and then we'll wrap up.
This is how we have to be thinking about Bitcoin. Like, I think the little lines you've got on the left-hand side of that chart, I'll share another chart that kind of zooms into what we're looking at. But that is the past 100,000 years of technological innovation. And I think when you kind of zoom out, I think what Bitcoin is going to do, like, I think Bitcoin is the civilizational inflection point for Homo sapiens. And I think the amount of change we're going to see over the next 1,000 years, what Bitcoin creates for us, it's not fathomable. I cannot predict what's going to happen, but I do think it's going to be much bigger and much more consequential than most people think. And I think nobody is thinking big enough. I don't know how big we should be thinking. I think Peter has an interesting framework talking about, okay, what happens if all the 20 million Bitcoin is sat on a treasury balance sheet of a nation state, a billionaire, or a public corporation? And what happens if there's $2 trillion of economic trade that's done in the world that has to be facilitated by the 450 Bitcoin mined every day? That's where you get to multiple billions of dollars per Bitcoin, right? So again, I think these frameworks are more directionally correct, but I don't want to lose people and get too bullish because I think, again, we're going much, much higher.
Yeah, I think we already lost. Actually, I think you're triggering the chat right now that like this guy is way too bullish. Like, this is crazy. But before we leave, there's a great comment here by McHoddle, and he goes, all models are broken AF. No one expected where we are now. I just forget about price and focus on earning more than you spend and stack more sats. That is the message, guy. Yes, we all love to, speculate. Like, price speculations are fun. I think, if you're honest with yourself, we just love. It might be human psychology. We just love predicting where it's going to go. But that is the core message, that the only thing that really matters, as Luke was saying earlier, as we say on the show constantly, is are you acquiring more sats year over year and constantly saving in Bitcoin? That's the only thing that really matters right now. Of course, I think after a certain point, you probably are sitting on a decent sized stack of Bitcoin. It's probably changed your life. You have 32 sats and you're like, this is generational wealth. We're going to the moon, bro. I'm going to be a millionaire. What's Luke's favorite? You're going to be a millionaire if you hold, no, you're going to be able to retire if you hold 1 million sats. But you first got to get there, and you first have to acquire Bitcoin. And so, yes, it's fun to speculate. No, we aren't telling you to trade Bitcoin. What we're telling you is you need to save in Bitcoin. Start today. Acquire a stack. Continue to acquire Bitcoin. Make sure you have cash flow. Make sure you have some profit and you're not wasting all your money so you can save in Bitcoin. This is how you win. This is how you protect yourself going into that crazy future that Luke was just pointing out right there. We don't know where we're going. All we know is it's going up forever, up and to the right. It's the best way to save your money. It is the only money. It's the only way to save money. It's in Bitcoin. Anyways, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up today's show. I know you and I can stay here bullish and ramble on for a long time, but today was July 1st, guys. We have made it past 6 months of the year. Will the last 6 months of this year be an incredible ride in Bitcoin? I sure hope so. Luke, thank you so much for coming on today's show. Actually, Luke will be with you guys here tomorrow. And actually, I'm going to give him some homework, guys. And I'm going to say this live so that we hold ourselves accountable. But I'm making Luke do some homework on that Bitcoin multiplier effect that I brought up yesterday. He hasn't had enough time to dive into it. I hope he has enough time. I know we have him doing a lot of stuff, but I really want him to come on here and explain this and get even more bullish. So, hey, drop a 1 in the chat if you guys want to see that tomorrow. And then Luke will have to deliver for you guys on tomorrow's culture. Again, Nico's going to be gone the rest of the week, so I will have another special guest for the wrap-up of the week, but you're stuck with me, guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed this show. Again, of course, smash the like button, hit the subscriber button, and drop a comment. Has Luke lost the plot by saying $7 billion Bitcoin? Yes, I would say 1. Yes. Okay, we got some 1s in the chat, Luke. All right, some 1s in the chat. They want the multiplier effect tomorrow. So all right, we'll deliver that for you guys. On that note, peace and love. We love you guys. We'll see you tomorrow. This has been your boy Opti. On that note, this was Simply Bitcoin Live.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.